on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. That has since been removed in the last 24 hours. There has been a major announcement.
4 new screenshots, we seem to think.
On this week's GTA 6 o'clock, the 10 tracks that have to be on the soundtrack. We take you through our choices for the game's radio stations, plus how the music industry has changed since Vice City. It's all here on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. Hello and welcome to episode 24 of GTA 6 o'clock. My name is James Jarvis and I am joined in the studio by Dan Dawkins. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
Hello. We have a bit of a special episode coming up, something a bit different. But first of all, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything like that, please leave us a lovely review. And you can also get in touch with us on Twitter at GTAVOclock or by email, which is gtaviclock@gmail.com. So, with that out of the way, we are right in the middle of what could be a very exciting time, Dan. Everyone's excited. I'm excited. I'm maybe getting a little bit too carried away with the excitement, and I'm setting myself up for disappointment. But what could be happening, and this episode might not even go out in its original state, depending on, the timelines and what happens. We might need to modify it. Full disclosure, we're recording this 2 days after the last episode that you would have heard. So we're on Thursday.
Yes.
So a day after the episode went out yesterday. But actually this will be going out in a week's time. And who knows what could have happened.
I know. And in those 2 days, there's been quite a number, not a number, one key significant thing. We talk every single podcast, every show about the earnings call that's upcoming, what it means for Rockstar's and Take-Two's projected financials, and what it means for the release date of GTA 6. We said on the last show, if there was to be some news on the financials about GTA's release date, wouldn't they want to get ahead of it and put some media out there, some kind of release? Now, it seems that people have been on the official GTA or Rockstar website and found that they put a listing up for, what was it, James? 4 new screenshots, we seem to think?
It wasn't, wasn't quite a listing. So what happened if you missed last week's show? Where were you? But just to contextualize all of this, there was a GTA bot set up on Twitter that basically was combing the Rockstar Games website for anything related to anything new related to GTA 6, and it had picked up that there was a selection of 4 URLs that went to screens and one that went to box art, which were currently obviously returning 404s, but they did exist. There's some debate whether they existed beforehand or afterwards, but what did seem to happen is there was, for a brief period of time, on the GTA 6 page, a screens header that had nothing underneath it. But if you inspected it with, when you press inspect on a internet window, you can see all the code and the different modules. There were slots for 4 screens under there, waiting. Obviously, they were blank and there was nothing on it. That has since been removed in the last 24 hours. So either it was a mistake, and they didn't really want people to find out about it, and they were just testing something. Or, I don't know what the or is, actually. I feel or it was, I think the argument is it was pulling stuff in because that happens on all the other pages on site for all of their other games.
Yes.
It was just an update that accidentally pushed a screens section, even though there was nothing in it. But,
so could have been an accident. I wonder, though, potentially more likely, Rockstar are watching us, watching them, because all the eyes of the GTA community are trained on even the most microscopic butterfly wing gesture of Rockstar's marketing machinations. So people tracking this level of sort of interior movement, you'd think they'd expect it because of the level of scrutiny, but maybe they didn't. And then I guess also it would explain potentially the reaction, because they've had enough stuff spoiled.
Yeah.
And the last thing they would want is to send any more clues or to make it any more public. So they may have just changed the way they deploy things. Some of this stuff is often very banal. It can be things like, we have a process for doing certain things. We always used to do it this way, but fiddle-dee-dee, people worked out how we do it and we can't do that anymore. So, for Rockstar, it's almost them having to re-examine their processes to make them more secret. And again, assuming they want them to be secret, but like we've talked about as well, do they deliberately put things out there? I don't think this feels like that. I just think this is something that's been detected and might hint at a bigger set of excitements.
Yeah, might. I guess depending on how excited you want to get. And I think that's a good point. And one thing that to consider now, and as you say, like I assume have considered, but maybe it just got missed, is we're in such a technologically more advanced stage now in 2024 than we were for any of their other games, that it must be difficult for those teams and the company being publicly listed to be able to even do any of these things that could affect the share price before they publicly want it to affect the share price. So if anything happens like this, oh my God, there are new screens coming, you would assume then that people are positive news for Take-Two, Rockstar. Yeah. And maybe before they officially announce it, I'm going to buy some shares, which obviously they don't want. But you can imagine the other side of it with the developers of that website and things going, come on, we can't even push a blank page to this site when we're trying to test if everything's going to work beforehand and all of that kind of stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is it's difficult for everyone. They want to make their website work and test it.
Yeah.
But anything that is even vaguely public on that front is going to get pulled up as look, they've done an adjustment. That must mean something.
And, they're being scrutinized by people who know how the internet works at a molecular level, whether they're software engineers or sort of IT systems experts, because everyone's got an interest in GTA. So I saw an argument just earlier on from someone had posted saying there's an astonishing amount of push data going back and forth to these links. And someone else had gone, that isn't push data, it's something else. And two people in the GTA community were arguing about the semantics of whether it was a push or not. And they eventually agreed to agree, but it was based on the idea of, the guy saying, I know it's not a push, but it's the closest way I can capture what's happening and explain it in a way people understand. And the other guy was like, yes, nod, see you. So we're at that level of inside baseball, machinations of how things work. And, hands up, I'm not an IT expert, so we're just trying to distill it with all the evidence and the lens of it. But, this is a potentially quite an exciting moment.
Yes. The top level for this is everything points to the things that we've been saying. I feel like maybe I'm getting caught up in the excitement more than you, but I'm we are, if this goes out as we are planning this to go out, we are one day away from the investor call. And so far, none of the screens have come out, if there are indeed going to be any screens, which only leaves either later on today or, ironically, as this podcast is going out about 5 or 6 o'clock on Wednesday, ta-da, here are the new screens. And then we're just here banging on about the soundtrack and things like that. So we will see. If you're listening to this episode unedited, there aren't any screens. If there has been a major announcement, then maybe this gets reworked somehow. One other quick point from last week before we get into what I just mentioned, the potential soundtrack discussion, which is going to be very exciting, is yes, we were talking about the big brands and the collaborations and things. And I mentioned, Disney, and they're going to have, we think Disneyland might be in it. What if they involved Marvel and all of that kind of stuff? Of course, I got carried away, and if they're going to have Disneyland in the game, of course it's going to be like a GTA pastiche of Disneyland.
Yep.
And if they're going to have any of those other brands in there, they're probably going to be GTA recreations of those other brands. There's no way they're going to go, and for this, we're teaming up with Marvel for this one ride. I don't think. I think they'll do the traditional, what's GTA's version of the Avengers, like that kind of thing. And actually, there was a great note from J-Man's Clan on YouTube who said, I can imagine a Republican Space Rangers zone with rides and actors, maybe a Princess Robot Bubblegum Castle or Dojo, Impotent Rage Coaster, like that kind of thing. So bringing their brands that have been in adverts and all of that kind of stuff from the other games and putting them into this kind of Disneyland environment where they all get their own themed sections. And obviously some hideous rat man to terrify the children. I think all of those things are great points, and that is exactly how I think they would do it if they were going to do some kind of Disneyland pastiche incorporation.
Yeah, and it just makes actually a really good central point, is that let's say, you know, Coke wanted to be part of GTA. Like, does Coke appear as Coke within the GTA universe alongside Sprunk? It creates this weird, almost like the MCU multiverse dichotomy of, well, in our universe, this lemonade drink's always been Sprunk. In ours, it's called something else. I wonder how they will navigate that. Will they just say, because, you know, if you were a sponsor, would you want, if you were Coke, let's say, would you want to pay all that money just for your drink to be called like Kronk or something in the world of GTA? I do wonder, like, some people might see that as cool, but others might be like, actually, no, we're Coke. You feature our product, please. That's why we're paying you the big bucks.
Yeah.
It's a legitimate, I guess, in marketing and branding question.
Yeah, and how much agency do you give them to be like, I'll do what you want with this? But as you say, I think in game they'd want to change it to be more in keeping with that world. And if they're doing that, then why do they need them at all? Like, they would just do it.
Yeah,
so, like,
exactly.
What's the benefit to Coke for doing that?
So my feeling would be, I think if I was working at Coke, for example, I would want it to appear as Coke, which does raise the question of how would that be resolved, and how do both parties get what they want? More delicious money and more, you know, more exposure, etc., etc. So, I mean, that's one for another day, but it does raise an interesting point.
Buy a can of Coke, get a GTA code for something in game.
Other colas are available.
Yes, delicious ones. Right then, Dan, on to this week. And the big topic of this week is we're going to do something a little different, like we said at the top, assuming that we haven't had any screens yet. So yeah, if you're listening to this the day before the investor call, those screens haven't arrived. But what we're going to do right now as a special treat, and we're doing this really, and this is the reason we're recording it early, is because one of us, me, is going on a trip outside of this studio to another studio next week. So we won't be able to record this at our normal time. So we're doing it a bit early. We thought, what could we do that's fun, still keeps a good current conversation going? And we've landed on, well, let's discuss the GTA 6 soundtrack. So what we're going to do is go through some of the tracks that we think have to be on the soundtrack from our point of view, or, you know, which radio stations they're going to be on, that kind of thing. So we've got 5 each. We're going to have a quick discussion about each of them. We're going to play a clip, which means that this episode is definitely going to get copyright flagged, but it's worth it for the entertainment, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got it with music episodes, you need the music. That's the way it works.
So we'd love to hear your suggestions, of course, and more importantly, at the end of this episode, once you get through it, who had the better playlist?
Oh, my God. Well,
a bit of healthy competition.
There's a surprising twist, and I may have to revise all the 5 I've picked. What I wanted to say was, like, when James proposed this, part of me thought, OMG, you know, we're going to pluck 10 songs out of the air from all of time. How do we make this relevant? But then the more I started digging into it, the more I thought, actually, there's quite a lot to say, and in true GTA 6 o'clock fashion, to analyse about the music they've chosen so far and the type of stations they had. So I actually think, you know, whilst we are making 5 informed choices, there's a lot of foregrounding we can do here about what Rockstar have done in the past and where we think they'll go again. So I thought it might be quite fun to, like, go a bit to some of those places, like even to start with the basics of, you know, once upon a time there was GTA Vice City, which is set in the same place as GTA 6, and to revisit, not molecularly revisit the soundtrack, but just as a very top line to say, you know, once upon a time, you know, GTA Vice City had 9 radio stations. We won't list through all the tracks and everything in detail, but maybe we can pop them up on the screen, because I think a lot of people will see those names, places like Wave 103 or V-Rock. And in my mind, when I hear them, I immediately see the CD jewel case. I can see the V-Rock man.
Yeah.
I can see the Wave 103 lady. Like, it's all so evocative. And I think that sense of physical media intersecting with GTA, this is a long time ago. It's 2002. But we were, at the cusp of the iPod. It was like a pre-MP3 world almost. CDs were just about
Yeah, they were
on
still,
the edge.
They were still cool.
Still a thing,
Still
right?
cool.
And like there were people. I think I had an iPod, but it was like you manually upload your songs via iTunes and all stuff now that feels very old world.
Yeah, the fact that they sent out the box set, the CD box sets of all the soundtracks that we had here in the office is telling to the time period that was sent out on. Like nowadays, I actually think, it's going off tangent a bit here, but I think for something like GTA 6, it's much more. What am I trying to say? It's going to be much more of a thing for them to send out like vinyl, because weirdly that has had a resurgence over the last 5 years, and you might end up actually getting a 2024 soundtrack on vinyl, like multiple vinyl things.
And the challenge would be, I think, as we'll talk about, given how big GTA 5 got in terms of tracks and stations. I mean, I'm willing to accept it. My wife may not be, but that might be like 50 vinyls, something like that. Because one radio station alone would be, records have a finite storage capacity.
Yes.
It would be a lot of records. It would be the coolest MFing thing you could ever have. And I'd love to see all that sleeve artwork and all that kind of loving recreation of detail, but it would be a big ask. So like moving from Vice City, it had like 9 channels, effectively what was 9 CDs at the time. So GTA Vice City 2002 on PS2. It was 4 years later until GTA Vice City Stories on, and we had to check this off air, PSP.
Yeah, who remembers that?
The PlayStation Portable. I mean, I was there working on a PlayStation mag at the time, and I sort of feel fondly about it, but in retrospect, that was not the Switch. There were lots of things that made it not great. But what Rockstar did do, they went all in. They made a really good GTA game, but they did mix up the soundtrack. So they kept 9 channels, like radio stations. But what I thought was instructive is they actually booted a few out and they brought a few in. So they got rid of Wild Style, K-Chat and Fever 105. And then they brought in Paradise FM, which is like another disco channel. They brought in VCFL, which is like a new soul channel. And they brought in Fresh 105, which is like a hip-hop electro channel. It's interesting because 4 years had passed.
Yeah.
Which is actually quite a bit of time. So I think people's tastes change, the radio stations evolve, and then as you move even further forward in time, the next big... We had GTA 4, of course, but I've jumped straight to GTA 5. GTA 5 had 18 radio stations. Again, we won't say them all out loud, but we can list them on screen. They later added 3 new stations. So you've got 21 radio stations to choose from. And what is interesting, I think, here is they have evolved the stations to reflect the fact music's actually changed. So, you had stations to pick something like the Blue Arc, the reggae and dub channel. We'll touch on that later. You had things like, there was in the early noughties, there was a big rise in sort of those New York pop electronica bands like The Rapture, who were really huge and cool. And like Rockstar had to reflect that. So I think that got adopted into the channels. So if you think of all those changes they made for GTA 5 in 2013, we are now in space year 2024, 2025. It's been over a decade since. So what I wanted to say all this for is to frame the fact the world has changed. GTA 6 is now, as we understand, set in like the modern day, right? So the radio channels and music has to reflect the modern day. So I think there'll be undoubtedly a nod to probably radio stations that were in Vice City. And like, if you ask me to guess, and I welcome your thoughts, James, like which channels do we think will survive? Like I would say the most iconic are probably like Flash FM, Wave 103, Radio Espantoso, I hope I'm saying that right, and VCPR, which again is the talk radio, which has survived through all the games. They might have different names, but I think the essence of those will remain.
I think it's telling that as we went through that, when you noted the Vice City to Vice City Stories swap outs, the 3 that they swapped out, I would say were correct. Because and as the ones you've listed, I mean, I'm disappointed that Emotion 98.3 isn't on your list of things, because that's radio stations.
Do you know? And the thing is, right? I think probably because I like not Emotion, the emotion so much.
I love Emotions.
I like that channel so much. I left it out because I didn't want to sound like a sap who loves that a lot. But I love that, and I agree with you. Like Emotions, probably the one I played most, along with probably Wave 103. That was definitely my jam. So like, would they please bring that back? I've just forgotten to mention it there. It's a really good note.
I mean, I think there's a whole other episode in like going through these and trying to rank the radio stations in like best to worst, because that would be a whole load of fun.
And that would be tremendous fun, like best tracks, best radio stations. So again, before we launch into our top 10 or our top 5 each, I just wanted to quickly pick out, like, the world has changed or music has changed. So like since 2013 to now, there's been a number of genres have really blown up. I'd say like Latin music's really blown up. K-pop, like K-pop was a thing, like it's been around a long time, probably since like late 80s, early 90s. But like in terms of it being part of the global conversation, last 5 to 10 years maybe, that's really blown up. Then you've had things like what's called whisper pop, which was the kind of the thread of indie.
Who's called it whisper pop?
That was
you?
Well, by me and The Guardian,
right.
Who coined that idea of the kind of acoustic, folksy, introspective indie as championed by someone like Lana Del Rey or Lorde or even Selena Gomez.
I'm not on board with whisper pop. I'm going to put that right out there.
You can't fight the facts. That's just what it's being called. Then we've had like one, I would say this is horrendous. There was that awful phase of all indie bands having to be like a sort of hand woven, old timey band like the Lumineers or Mumford and Sons. You know, everything was like a sort of terrible barn dance festival. You might love that music, and I apologize if you do. I would like that stricken from history. I don't think that has any place in GTA6. And then I guess probably, you know, without explaining every single genre that's blown up, the biggest overarching trend has probably been rock music and indie being on the fade out, hip hop, R&B, pop, smushing together and essentially taking over the world. And this is where I guess that artists like Drake, Kendrick, Cardi B, people who live in this gap between, I guess, what we've seen once upon a time when R&B was like gangster and like classic hip hop to what's essentially a super pop facing but still leaning on the, like old school creds mechanic.
You can play the tunes on the radio with a little bit of censorship.
Yeah, exactly kind of that. They played on, you know, in the UK, Radio 1. They're mainstream acts, but a lot of them is the explicit lyrics version. You can see the roots to hip hop as we knew it in sort of the 80s, but it's evolved so much. And like, I won't read them all out, but like hip hop itself encompasses over 20 subgenres. So you've got like gangster, jazz rap, grime, boom bap, hipster hop, and then you've got things like electro, drill. I don't know if you're a fan of drill, James.
I'm not a fan of drill, but I'm sure some of our listeners will be.
Some fans out there, big shout out to Chief Keef. And then like music like trap, which is like Young Jeezy. So it shows that there's such a rich smush of genres. And Rockstar could, if they wanted, you know, rather than doing like one, hip hop style channel, really spill it out into subdivisions. And that will be the interesting thing, is like where they decide to cut the pie of modern music. I don't know how they'll resolve that, but if they had 21 channels in GTA 5, the question might be, will they have more? Will they just change them and have different? A bigger question, this is another episode, will radio stations even be the dominant music delivery system in GTA 6? Could it be some kind of Spotify style replacement, you know, of playlists and different things? That's a whole different set of thinking, and I don't want to blow away all our thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to have radio stations.
They will have it. They will have radio. I just wonder whether they'll overlay it with something. It's more like, you know, music has changed. Like, albums aren't really the thing anymore. It's all about hit singles, things that can be lived out on TikTok and memes. You know, like war, music has changed, and wow. You know, I meant that as a Fallout reference, not as a reference to war. So yeah,
war reference.
Feel free to cut that out, Nathan, in case I sound like a crazy person.
Right then. Well, with all of that said, I know we've got a few other bits that we might be able to pepper in through this, but shall we kick off with one of your songs. And I think we briefly touched on this when we came into the studio. Of course, there are millions and millions of songs. These aren't, the 5 of the best songs that we think, these are our 5 best songs ever. They're just songs that we think have a chance of appearing on the soundtrack. And we could have made this episode top 100 songs and gone through 100 of the songs, but we don't want to be sitting here for 10 hours just playing 100. Well, actually, I do. But we probably don't need to do that on an episode right now. And we have plenty more episodes to come in the future. So this is just a quick glimpse into, the things that we think might be on the soundtrack and the reasons why we think they're going to be on the soundtrack.
Yeah. And the lens I looked at it as is like either they might actually be on the soundtrack or I think they're interesting for Rockstar. And Rockstar are, just to wind it back, they started life as a music label. They were originally like staffed by A&R men. They knew the music industry. Their big pitch was we can make games cool like music. So they obsess over this stuff. So like I've tried to pick tracks that are probably not as cool as the one Rockstar would pick, but thinking the same way. And Rockstar are so obtuse, they will hardly ever go for the obvious option for an artist. But I wanted to get a flavour of the way they might be thinking, and then Rockstar can one-up me by doing something cleverer.
Okay, right. Track number 1. Do you want to intro it, or should we just press play?
Press play.
I'm in the corner, watching you kiss her. Oh, I'm right over here. Why can't you see me? Oh, I'm giving it my all, but I'm not the guy you're taking home. Ooh, I keep dancing on my own.
Okay, that track, if you didn't know it, is Robin, super fated pop artist who influenced basically all of modern dance music, and the song Dancing on My Own. Now, the reason I picked it, it's too obvious, right? It's the number 1 song as chosen by Rolling Stone, like their number 1 song of the 2010s, and NMEs, and Stereo Gums. So this song's cultural impact is absolutely seismic. Critics adore it. It gets people up at dance floors. Now, why? I mean, in Robin's own words, I think this is like what became known as like the dawn of the sad banger. So
Yeah.
it's like an introspective song with quite downbeat lyrics juxtaposed with like an absolutely thumping dance track. And like that's been, I think, as popularized by Taylor Swift and beyond, one of the dominant themes of the 2010s, and beyond that. So for someone like Rockstar, the reason I chose it is because they are someone who's very much on the cultural pulse and understand the meaning or social significance of a track. This is a track that, is recognized as setting out the pavestone of all modern pop that followed. So I think it's a really good choice. It's also been twinned to iconic TV crossovers. So it was used in like an ultra famous scene in the series Girls, like Lena Dunham series. So there's a moment where, spoilers, Hannah finds out her boyfriend is gay, and then she's sat in her flat and this song comes onto her laptop. And a lot of people thought it was just like the perfect track for a show that defined an era and like a cultural moment. So for all of those reasons, I thought it was a good pick. A little bit of trivia for it. The producer said they were super picky about how they made the song, and they said they found hundreds of lyrics that were written and scrubbed. So like all good music, I think it was a real labor of love. Now, another reason, like Robin has form in the GTA universe. So classic Rockstar, they know what they're doing. They have featured Robin before, but with a different track. So they did feature With Every Heartbeat on the GTA 5 soundtrack on Non-Stop Pop FM. This is Robin's iconic hit. Get it in there. It's probably too obvious, but I think it's setting the tone for how they think.
Just before we jump in, I think we should alternate. So I can do one in mine next.
Yes.
But just before we do that, what you've reminded me by speaking about Girls is, have you seen the Netflix mega hit Saltburn?
No.
Well, it's not too much of a spoiler, but at the end of that film, they play Sophie Ellis-Bextor's Murder on the Dance Floor, which has had a massive... This isn't one of my picks. It's just reminded me that's had a massive resurgence in the last almost like 6 months from her going, that song was released, I don't know how long ago, 10 years,
Yeah.
maybe more.
Yeah,
It
probably
didn't
more.
do that. Well, it did all right. It wasn't massive. But now, just because it's featured on this Netflix thing at the end, it has blown up. So if you want a bonus track, Sophie Ellis Bextor's Murder on the Dance Floor, please.
Yeah, and to take that further, you'd look at probably the biggest example of that is Stranger Things and Kate Bush.
Yeah,
like that
Running
song
Up
is
That Hill.
popped off for like Gen Z and or Gen Z, and I like that song first time around. Cough, cough, cough. This is the power of music and cultural moments.
Okay, well, let's jump into one of my choices now. So, DJ.
How you like me now? 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 How you like me now?
So that was, for those who are unfamiliar, The Heavy with How Do You Like Me Now? This is actually one of my favourite bands, and they are local to Bath. I used to go to a club, Sides Bar. I used to go to a club where the bassist in this bar worked behind the bar, and we became quite friendly with him. But we would go in and he would serve us the pints at 2 a.m. You might be familiar with that track as it has featured on like adverts and some other game soundtracks, like The Heavy. I remember being on like Borderlands trailers and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So might be familiar with them. I think it's great. They haven't been on a GTA soundtrack before, but I think this next bit is something that I read some of your notes, Dan, and went, oh, I've only done facts of like, I know these guys from Bath, where you did a bit more facts and digging into like what the songs could mean. So I had a little look around, and Calvin Swaby, the lead singer here, has said that this song, it was a point of him and Daniel, which is Taylor, the heavy guitarist's life, when they were kind of at ends with their girls.
Yeah.
How Do You Like Me Now was when you can take advantage of a situation and it doesn't matter what you do. I'm trying to say that I've been really, really bad. You shouldn't love me after all. I'm telling you I've done this and I've done this and done this. So how do you like me now? So it's like a story of, look at all the bad things that I've done. You shouldn't love me, and you can do this with basically any song.
Yes.
But if you flip that into what
Yeah.
we think the themes of GTA6 are going to be,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I've done a load of bad stuff. You shouldn't love me, but maybe you do, Jason and or Lucia.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about this song is on one hand, like you're right, it's like a song that you instinctively know. You've probably seen it played at the end of like a person's bought a new credit card. How do you like me now? I'm signed up to the banking system. Those kind of things. But the song is so good that it transcends those associations. And I think that when you hear it, I was tapping my feet and doing little dancing to it, despite me knowing it's been on adverts for things I would say are not credible.
Yeah.
Now, that's testament to the song. Like, would Rockstar use it? Probably not, because there's such arch bastards, right, when it comes to picking things that aren't popular. But equally, they sometimes fly, because they're so contrary, they sometimes do pick the obvious thing because they're not scared to. That's the pain of being cool. It's
Yes.
hard to predict.
And I think, like, to your earlier point, I mean, The Heavy have a number of albums. They could quite easily pick a more obscure track and be like, hey, we're giving you guys the thumbs up, but we're not playing your mega hit. We're going to do one of the B-sides as it would
Here's
be back
one
in
of the
day.
Belgian vinyl B-sides that 3 people have bought.
All right. Well, that's good. Tick, tick so far. Let's move on to your second choice then, Dan.
Yeah, now my second choice, this artist won't be a surprise, but let's hit up the second track, Mad City.
Brace yourself, I take you on a trip down memory lane. This is not a rapper, I'm slinging crack or moon cocaine. This is cold second, plenty cognac and major pain. Not the drill sergeant, but the stress that weighing on your brain. It was me, El Boogie, Yang and YG Lucky. Ride down Rosecrans, it got ugly. Waving your hand out the window, check yourself.
So, Dan, who was that?
So, as many people will know, it's Kendrick Lamar. Now, like Kendrick Lamar is arguably, maybe with Taylor Swift, the artist. There's other people you could throw into this, right? One of the artists of the last decade, right? And this album, like the Mad City album, is routinely acclaimed as one of the great albums in modern musical history. It's kind of like a first-person confessional but distorted monologue of like basically how Kendrick Lamar became Kendrick Lamar. So it's kind of him growing up somewhere tough, like in Compton, the realities of being on the streets, and the entire. It is an album and it's meant to be listened to that way and peppered through with, and this is a really interesting thing, he used actual quotes from his parents to illustrate it. So it's just such an incredible authored mesh of ideas. He said himself, like, it's like a super dark album. And he said if he didn't have full creative control on it, no one would have, it wouldn't have come out. Like it's not something you could have workshopped. He had to be a very auteur-led production. So, you know, why Kendrick? Why this song? Well, Kendrick already is a Rockstar favorite. I mean, if you go back to the GTA 5 soundtrack, there are, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Kendrick-related tracks on GTA 5. Amazingly, and again, classic Rockstar, none of them this.
Nope, you're not going to get the hit.
Yeah, or you know, any of his maybe. He's got like 50 tracks you could have chosen, right? And it even amongst Kendrick fans, there'll be a debate among which is the best, which is the most popular, which is the most dancey, which is the most mainstream. Like all great artists, you can cut it lots of different ways. I thought Mad City because, you know, this feels like the one that's it's the sort of the title track of his most iconic album. This is about the struggle, you know, everything. I don't want to start saying stupid things. People go, no, you're not a fan, you don't understand. But like this track, I think typifies what he's about and his announcement as an artist. It feels very rock star to want to champion the auteur and someone who's creative and going their own way, which is very much what Kendrick is. I will add, I did think the track they might choose would be Kendrick Lamar's All Right. Now that is quite an intense track. And it takes about 2 minutes to actually become a song.
Yeah.
Now that song, the reason that song is interesting, but also maybe difficult to use, is it sort of became the unofficial anthem of the BLM movement. So it's deeply politically charged as a track. So for Rockstar, I think including it would invoke a level of politics for some people. I'm not saying anything either way on that, just to say that the decision itself will be seen as a conscious choice. So I would say perhaps less for that and the fact that it takes about 2 minutes to get going.
Yeah.
I've chosen Mad City.
Next up, Dan, let's go back to 2007.
Oof.
Whatever makes it break, but I got it where I want it now. Whoa, it was never my intention to break, to steal it all away from you now. But God, does it feel so good? 'Cause I got it where I want it now. And if you could, then you know you would. 'Cause God, it just feels so.
Paramore with Misery Business. Paramore are one of those bands that have been around forever, and I'm actually surprised that they haven't been on a GTA soundtrack before. But they haven't. They have been on a lot of other soundtracks, like, you know, all your classic Guitar Hero, Rock Band, Sing, all of the like karaoke style ones. They were part of The Sims at one stage. I think they did a Simish version of this song. Weirdly, they were in NHL 08. You know,
Yeah.
the standout track on that song. But they were actually more recently in Fortnite Festival, like Fortnite's new music mode that they've just been added to. So they are still licensing this song. They've also, over the years, had quite a lot of transformations in terms of their sound and like the kind of things that they're putting out. So I think, as discussed, if they were going to pick a Paramore song, this one is maybe too obvious. You know, it's 281 million views on YouTube, but there are quite a lot of other ones out there that they can pick from that might be more relevant.
And the thing I would say is amazing is even though it's had that many views, I've never heard it before.
You've never heard it before?
No, I know who Paramore are, but
Right.
I just don't know that track.
Wow. Well, yeah. Well, it's 16 years old. You've had 16 years to listen to this, but hopefully you can go away and listen to it in full. I thought what was interesting is that this song was written about a past experience of Hayley Williams' life, which involved a male friend who she felt was being exploited by a girl. So when Williams and her friend dated afterwards, she wrote the track in order to finally explain my side of the story and feel freed of it all. So it's very much in keeping with somebody exploiting somebody else in a relationship.
Yeah,
Tick, tick, tick on
you
the
mean,
GTA.
do you mean Taylor Swift's career? Zing.
And a lot of the things that we're talking about so far, a lot of the artists have such a big back catalogue that I do start to think, obviously they're going to have radio stations, but your suggestion of playlists or some kind of, artist station / something you can listen to all of the tracks at once might be a kind of vibe that we start getting into. Like, you listen to the radio stations, but then, like you say, like Spotify, maybe you can have something out and about, like on your quote unquote phone, and you're walking around the world listening to, give me an artist list of all the Paramore songs, please. The licensing on that would be insane, but who knows? Maybe they can hook something up like that.
I did, again, this is maybe another podcast in itself. I wonder if they would use music in the same way most people do now, where you might say, hey, my AI phone assistant, pick me some reflective music for concentration, music for action, for exercise. Could
Music
they do
for
that?
robbing a shop.
Yeah, exactly that. But these are the things that people would probably want when you're playing GTA 6, because you want things that are empathetic with your mood. Rockstar have normally kind of done that. A song happens to come on the radio at the right time, going all the way back to Vice City and Billie Jean. When you get on the bike, it just so happened to always start with that song. So I think they can author moments like that with the radio station, but I wonder if they throw it fully open.
And I guess there's also the option nowadays of having dynamic playlists. Like, they don't have to keep the same music on the radio stations all the time now. It can swap in and out. So there's plenty of choices. And to keep that fresh when you're driving around the world, you're like, oh, I know what the next track is. And then suddenly it's not that. And you're like, oh, bit of a new thing. Exactly the kind of thing that they're doing with Fortnite radio stations now. You flick a radio station on, you're not really sure what's going to happen, but you know that it's a genre that you like, and therefore you're going to get artists and be like, oh, this one's cool, actually. Take us to track 3 then, Dan.
So track 3, I wanted this to be, I was going to pick a track that was just super, super popular, that Rockstar almost had to include, but knowing them would pick some absurd remix of it that only 3 people have heard of again in Belgium. So I was going to say Lord's Royals, which is super famous, again recognised by Rolling Stone as one of the defining tech of the 2010s. Classically, Rockstar have actually already done that. That was in GTA 5 on the Blue Arc reggae soundtrack. So, that's how we got to enjoy Royals via the medium of reggae.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, rule out songs such as, and these are absolute, you might die inside thinking of a song like this. A song like Despacito or Justin Bieber's Sorry, but remixed in such an arch way, like a drill / electronica remix where you're like, oh, well done, Rockstar, you've culturally reappropriated that. But I could be guessing those all day long. Yeah. So what I've chosen is I've just gone straight into a proper 1980s track that for me speaks to the heart of the 80s and I guess my 80s experience. It's also a shout out to someone else who's from my homeland. So this is...
It's Tom Jones.
It's Tom Jones. No, it's the green grass of... It's Howard Jones, because everyone in Wales is called Jones. Howard Jones, No One Is to Blame.
Oh, Dan was singing along in the studio there, and I'm just having to sort out my whiplash from the desperate... I mean, what a change of pace from your last selection.
I thought I would keep it eclectic. I'm sure Rockstar would appreciate it. Look, this track is chosen largely because I love it. It would make absolute sense on something like Emotion or Wave or one of the 80s tracks. If I was really searching for a justification for it, this song is about, I guess, an attraction to someone you can't be with, or like an unrequited craving or longing. It could be easy to say, that would fit with the theme of GTA games, where you're all about trying to achieve commercialism, the next thing, whatever it is. Now, this song actually came from Howard Jones, who was a quite popular pop artist in the UK who tried to break America in the 80s, and this was his most successful US single. What was interesting is he played it to a US music executive who was very not impressed by it, and his response was, "I think it's a B-side." So he may not have used that accent, but just for
he may
effect,
not have been generic.
I've just
American.
offended everyone in America with my accent. But he's an executive, so we're allowed to insult him. It came from Howard Jones walking around with another executive, and being in San Francisco as quite a young man, intoxicated by different city. Good grief, there's loads of beautiful women, and this is again of its era, where the executive with him said, "Well, you can look at the menu, but you don't have to eat." And Howard Jones was saying, "Well, I've never heard a phrase like that before," but it gave him the idea for this song, an idea of like unrequited longing or that. It's just a great emotional 80s banger that I think is sufficiently left of centre for Rockstar to include.
Love it. All right, well, on to my third choice, and we are going back to some more sort of soulful sounds.
With all my favorite colors, yes sir. All my favorite colors, my sisters and my brothers, see 'em like no other. All my favorite colors.
That was the Black Pumas with Colours. I feel like we're doing some kind of radio show now ourselves. I hope you're enjoying tonight's mix. So yes, the Black Pumas with Colours. This, to me, feels like a very Miami track. You
Yes.
can imagine yourself driving along Miami Beach with this blasting out down your convertible as you just take in the sunset and that kind of thing. So I'd love this to be on the soundtrack. These guys actually supported The Heavy, which was the other track, on a UK tour, which is how I first discovered them. They started in 2017, which was quite a long time ago. So if you were going to say, well, they weren't going to include The Heavy and they wanted something a bit more obscure, take their support act and put that on the soundtrack instead. The name doesn't really mean anything, but they've said that the name was made all the cooler by the way that the Americans pronounce the word puma, which I guess is puma.
Puma.
Right? So it's the Black Pumas. This song, Colours, actually got quite a lot of attention. It was nominated for Record of the Year, like the Grammy Record of the Year in 2020. It didn't actually win, but they did perform at the Grammys. They performed this track at the Grammys and got a lot of plaudits from doing that, and I think became a little bit more popular because obviously the Grammys is a pretty popular thing. And the singer, if we're trying to connect this all the way back to, why would it be on GTA 6? He said he was trying to figure out how to write a song that explains the plight of someone who is spiritual trying to find their truth. He said in the track breakdown that Colours was his attempt to write something from my highest self. So it's all about self-discovery and being able to find the truth and the trust, that key word that we keep coming back to on this podcast. So something you've heard before, Dan?
Not heard it before. Hearing you say that.
What an education.
Hearing you say that, Kiflom, brother.
Okay, 2 more tracks each. So we'll keep cracking on. Your penultimate track, Dan.
Now, you may not be expecting this one, James, and I've gone way off radar for my normal listening. I think it would be crazy for GTA 6 not to have a K-pop channel or a nod to K-pop/J-pop. So I have picked that whilst this might be the first time you've heard this, for the K-pop aficionado, you might be, oh my God, not that song, it's been totally overplayed. But to a huge section of the audience, this might be, they'd be like, oh my God, what's this? It's so exciting. So let's dive in there and listen to Girls' Generation G.
그래요 그대 보는 날 너무 반짝반짝 눈이 부셔 No 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 너무 깜짝깜짝 놀란 나는 Oh 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 너무 짜릿짜릿 몸이 떨려 지지지지지 젖은 눈빛 Oh yeah 좋은 향기 Oh yeah yeah yeah
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, you see? An involuntary yes. Because when that song gets going, it's an absolute banger. Now, the reason, beardy musos, to quote the stereotype, love it is because a lot of people say it's like the quintessence of a Korean word they use called egyo, which sort of means, I hope I'm saying that right, which is a Korean term for like cutesy behaviors and speech. So it's like the very essence of K-pop. They're saying its application is like dizzying, maximalist, They were saying it's in not many K-pops before it has since have captured this sense of giddy infatuation, which is at the heart of K-pop. Now, like all of these songs we're talking about, the record label initially didn't want it and were against releasing it because they said the song's lyrics were childish and the melody was weak. More fool you, tastemakers.
Yeah,
and
what do they know?
It went on to become the most viewed K-pop video of all time until a song you will have heard of, Psy's Gangnam Style.
Yes. Yeah, like we're pulling these up on YouTube and having a little bop as we go along to them. But 14 years ago this was released, but 321 million views, which is not an insignificant amount of people have watched this on YouTube. All of the comments of people loving it. I think it's great. I'd never heard it before, but will be adding that. Like I'll get, if when I go home and the partner comes in, she's definitely going to be like, what are you listening to? And I'll be like, hey, get on board. Some K-pop.
Have they been in GTA before? No. Do I think they will be, or certainly K-pop will be? Yes.
Okay, well, I will crack on with my next one then. And we are going for a bit of a different vibe now. Let's go across the world.
Tengo reservado el hotel, pero con estas ganas no vamos a llegar. Somos tan desesperados, por eso no tuvimos que parquear. La atrás no espera el asiento. Tú eres una aventura cuando te desnudo.
There you go. That was, I hope I'm going to say this right, Raul Alexandro. No, Alexandro?
I don't know, but good luck.
Okay. Yes, with his track Desperados. This was, now I'm slightly cheating a bit here, because this was one of the tracks that was allegedly on a leaked soundtrack that was potential songs that are going to be in
Yeah,
GTA 6.
sure.
So there was like a list of 30 odd songs that came out, and this was included in that list. So I thought it'd be good to add it on just in case that list turns out to be true, and then I can give myself a little pat on the back. So this was a song that debuted at number 27 on the US Billboard Hot Latin Songs chart on December 25th, 2021, which was Alejandro's 26th entry. And April the 2nd, 2022, it reached its peak of number 5, giving him his 6th top 10 hit on the charts. So he's a popular guy. He's a Puerto Rican singer and rapper doing a collaboration on this track. But it's actually like, it gives me those vibes as well that I think would be quite befitting of a GTA 6 soundtrack.
I think perhaps of all the songs we play, this is one where I might say it feels almost nailed on.
Well, because of the leaks.
Well, because of the leak, but also because it's such everything about it checks out. In real life, in Florida, like the 5 biggest radio stations are essentially all Spanish speaking. In wider culture, there's such a blow up of Latin music. And so Rockstar will be cherry picking, I think, a mixture of artists who are going to play out well in sort of Europe and a world where they might be less familiar with Latin music. And that's a gross generalization. I'm just saying very, very broadly. And then also stuff that's just really cool and in the know. And that's what they're all about, like giving you a mix of the obvious and the slightly left field. And I think this track would completely work.
Well, there you go. Alejandro with Desperados. What I will say is if you do get the English translation of these lyrics, they get a little bit spicy. They are not safe for work.
Oh.
So there's one more track each left, Dan. You are going to do your final track right now.
I'm picking this song largely because I wrote this in my notes, I effing love this song. And the other day I did the washing up to this song and got really wistful and manic about it. So I absolutely adore it. There's a justification for it in that I think Rockstar are yet to, I think, properly mine a sort of grunge / skate pop channel. And if you were doing it, you would go in hard on this artist. And I would say that this is one of their best tracks. And again, this is me as a super fan of this band. But yeah, let's drop the track. So, as you all know, a lot of you are going, what the hell was that? That is Dinosaur Jr.'s Forget the Swan. Now, this is the opening track of their opening album, which originally Dinosaur Jr. used to be called Dinosaur. So their first album was called Dinosaur by Dinosaur. Pop fact, due to a lawsuit, they had to change their name to Dinosaur Jr. So then their debut album was no longer self-titled, which was slightly unfortunate. This is still the opening track. I love it and think it's a total banger, like really swoonsome. What I like about it is that it's the sound of an artist taking their first steps in the world. And the band that Dinosaur Jr. became is not this song, but you can hear echoes of it in what they are. Dinosaur Jr. went on to become, and still are, the seminal grunge band, without whom there would be no Foo Fighters, there would have been a Nirvana, Sonic Youth are part of the same, thrall. They're the quintessential grunge band, and for me, this is like where they were finding their feet, and it's the most interesting period for them. Hence, the period I think Arch Rockstar should mine. So please,
Okay.
Rockstar, go for like a sort of skate rock, early grunge channel, and I'm here for some Dinosaur Jr. That's all I'm saying. Have they been in a soundtrack before? No, and that kind of blows me away.
Yeah, that is interesting because it's right in that time period, isn't it? Like this came out, 85-ish?
Yeah.
And you'd think that if they were going to put that on a rock station of Vice City, maybe they've looked at it before, Dan, and crossed it off their list.
I mean, what I would say, and this might not be true, Jay Massis, who's the sort of quasi-famous central figure in Dinosaur Jr., is such an authentic artist, or certainly portrays himself as being. I could believe that they just said no. Or if you hear interviews with Jay Massis, you almost think it's a piece of performance theatre because he's so laid back. Like all his interviews in the 90s used to sound honestly like he'd emerged from like a chamber of marijuana, essentially, where he'd come out and be like, yeah, well, and you were like, he's putting a character on. But that's just how he was. Like, that's his thing. And he's a genuinely authentic artist who now plays music that sounds like it did 20 years ago. So I would think Rockstar would like him. Would he want to like them back? I don't know. But, he's a guy now who's advancing in years. He may want one last payday. So we'll see. And anyway, it's me saying I like Dinosaur Jr. and you should too. I'm allowed one track like that and I've thrown it in.
Good. Well, then let's wrap this up with my final track. This is one that everyone is probably going to have heard of. It's definitely far too popular to maybe even make it onto the soundtrack. But the interesting thing here is we're going to play actually like the TikTok live version of this video instead of the official video for reasons that we will get onto afterwards. So let's play the song and have a little look at the top left-hand side of the screen as this plays.
Sin City's cold and empty. No one's around to judge me. I can see clearly when you're gone. And I said, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I said, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I trust.
Did you see it, Dan? Did you see it?
No, and that's because I'm half blind and it's quite a tiny screen. But please tell us, James, because everyone watching this will see it, but I just can't from where I'm sat in the
We'll
studio.
go back to it's 59 seconds into this track. I'll make it big for you
There
in
we
our
go.
studio.
Oh!
There it is. The words that everyone wants to see. GTA6 trailer is in here. Now, before anyone gets too overexcited, this was obviously the version of The Weeknd's Blinding Lights, and it's the TikTok experience featuring Major Lazer. And what is happening here is the people who are watching live on TikTok could text in things and all the comments would appear on the screen. So all this is just someone texting in GTA 6 trailer for it to appear in this video, which, isn't a sign of anything. But I think it is still interesting that it is left in there even now, and there hasn't been like some kind of communication or Rockstar going, guys, could you just like blur that out when you upload it, or retrospectively take it out, please? That would be lovely. Can I see this being on the GTA 6 soundtrack? Yes. Could they have used it in a trailer? Yes, but they haven't. And I don't think they will. Like, it's too popular for it to be in a trailer, but will it be on a soundtrack? I think so. I've picked this mainly because it's a song that we use to train my dog.
Oh,
When the chorus, when he's like do 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 do, touch is like the thing that we use to get her to come and like touch our hand if she wants a treat. So it's become the household dog training song that we sing along to and get her to do things. So it's another one of those ones that, am I just putting things in and putting tracks that I like on this list? Yes, and this is one of them. So that's why it's in here.
but The Weeknd is one of the defining artists of the 2010s. That makes total sense to include him in some way. He is a bit popular to the point of, I don't want to say cheesy, but like when he did that TV show, The Idol, which was routinely panned as one of the worst, most indulgent things on TV this year, it might have slightly tipped him over the cultural spectrum for Rockstar. But by the same measure, his best tracks are absolutely popular bangers. So you can see them wanting to include him in some way, even if it's a remix. So
You'd absolutely get it on like whatever the version of Flash FM is, like the pop station.
Yeah.
You could put this on there easily and it would be fine. What we haven't done on this list, Dan, is gone through anything that is on some of the Vice City soundtracks. Like there's no Cutting Crew, Died in Your Arms Tonight. There's no like Self Control by Laura Branigan. Like none of that, because that I would feel is obvious. So what we've tried to do here is expand the horizons a little bit. We know we're going to get some 80s bangers. We know there's going to be some, well, we don't know. We assume there's going to be some 80s bangers. We think there'll be returning tracks from that playlist. But these are ones that are away from that we are just thinking about could be included on the soundtrack.
100%. Like I said, my sort of overall, having looked at it more closely, my feeling is that, yeah, K-pop or J-pop, yes. Subgenres of hip-hop, yes. Subgenres of Latin music and Spanish music, yes. And then I think loads of 80s classics that we expect, loads of pop. Bigger question mark of will it just be radio stations how you enjoy music in GTA 6? That's a different show.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us on this pretty special episode of GTA 6 o'clock. Let us know what you think about the selections in the comments below. Please do drop your suggestions in the comments below on YouTube as well. Get in touch with us on Twitter at GTABOclock and email us gtabio'clock@gmail.com for any leaks, suggestions, theories, questions, anything like that. There is an investor call tomorrow. We will do a special episode of that in the coming weeks. There might even be a bonus one in between this week and next week. We'll see, depending on what kind of material we get. But until then, this has been GTA 6 o'clock, and we will see you back next Wednesday for another episode of GTA 6 o'clock.